extraordinary until proven otherwise.
Just let me know.
What is that? Okay. Oh, this is about to be crazy. Oh, Jack trying to mindfuck everybody, huh? What is this? Bro, this is a UFO? Why the
In
beat
early
so hard?
2007, this silent black and white video was uploaded by a user on a conspiracy and UFO-centric forum called Above Top Secret. The user claimed the video depicted a disc-shaped UFO outmaneuvering a fighter jet somewhere off the coast of Mexico in the mid-2000s.
Outmaneuvering?
They had supposedly gained access to the video while serving on board a US aircraft carrier and claimed to have smuggled a potentially classified material off the ship. While some members of the forum chose to believe their story, others were not so easily convinced. For instance, the video was hosted on a website belonging to a group of German film students, which led some to denounce the clip as an attempted hoax. Even those who believed it could be genuine still complained that it was a totally uninspiring video of a fuzzy dot.
See, I feel like if something's moving hella fast, especially with like, because the frame rates of the cameras back in the day, bro, were so tragic. So, I mean, honestly, I wasn't expecting for somebody to just get a super clear close-up image of a UFO. So I never really understood what people expect to see. Like, do they just think aliens just gonna walk out and wave to the camera? Like, and that's what we'll get to see as like the proof, you know? Like, we know something else is out there. I definitely don't think it's like the movie style aliens, but I mean, hey, who knows? Who knows?
Over a decade later, this long-forgotten video suddenly resurfaced as part of an article by the New York Times. The video was now linked to a secret government-funded program and was even corroborated by a credible eyewitness. What had initially been dismissed as a hoax turned out to be real. The video was said to depict a genuine encounter between US Navy fighter jets and some sort of unidentified craft.
Uh-oh.
A second black and white video of a similar yet completely separate incident was also featured at the beginning of the article, except this one had sound.
Dude, there's a drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
These two.
Yeah, but if you're catching up with something like that, like, doesn't that also mean that like your craft is capable of doing what that craft is doing? I don't know. This one's a confusing one.
Videos, along with a third released a few months later, spread across the internet like wildfire.
Hey, all right,
Comment
pal,
sections and discussion threads were dominated by unrestrained speculation about aliens and paranormal phenomena. The skeptics, meanwhile, took it upon themselves to analyze every pixel in every frame in the hopes of uncovering some neglected clue that could identify these fuzzy blobs. Any lingering doubts about the video's authenticity vanished with the release of an official statement by the Department of Defense confirming that the videos depicted real events involving unidentified aerial phenomena. So, what exactly are we looking at?
That's what I want to know. Oh, this is gonna be good, huh?
The first video was recorded off the northwestern coast of Mexico in late 2004. The story behind it has been recounted by more than a dozen naval officers, and it goes like this. In early November of 2004, a naval strike group led by the aircraft carrier the USS Nimitz was conducting pre-deployment exercises about 100 kilometers southwest of San Diego. Starting around the 10th of November, radar technicians aboard a guided missile cruiser, the USS Princeton, were puzzled by a series of unidentified radar tracks near San Clemente Island. The tracks did not resemble any known aircraft and would sporadically appear in groups of 5 to 10 at a time. Suspecting a malfunction of some sort, the recently upgraded Spy-1 radar system was taken offline and recalibrated. Once the system was brought back online, however, the tracks had only become sharper. Among those on board were Senior Chief Operations Specialist Kevin Day, who was an expert on the Spy 1 radar system and had 18 years worth of experience at the time of the incident. They observed firsthand how these unknown targets alternated between slightly strange and physics-defying maneuvers. Sometimes a cluster of tracks would appear out of nowhere and slowly drift south. They were flying too high to be birds, too slow to be conventional aircraft, and did not follow any commercial airways.
What?
Other times, they would seemingly descend from space and drop all the way down to sea level in mere seconds. These phenomena continued for several days, and every time they reappeared, the crew would run up to the bridge and use a pair of heavily magnified binoculars to see these tiny specks moving erratically in the distance.
See,
on the morning of
and then it just, I feel like it's always like, oh man, like that could be crazy. And then they put something like that in there that's like, what? Like, come on, bro. Come on, man. Like, that could have just been lights like reflecting off of stuff, you know what I mean? And probably not like that. I don't know. Well, I want to see what the other side's argument is to like what it actually could be. Because whenever they argue it, it's never like really that. Yeah, no cap, Dazza. Especially if you're out at sea, because they were probably a little tipsy too.
November the 14th.
Links, we're watching Extraordinary Until Proven Otherwise. It's like almost like a little UFO style thing, you know? Let's check it out.
The crew on board the USS Nimitz were gearing up for a scheduled air defense exercise. They had not yet been informed of the unusual returns picked up by the Princeton. It was a cloudless day, and the sea was calm as pilots took to the skies. One of them was Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Kurth, who was flying a single-seat FA-18 fighter jet when he was contacted by the Princeton. He was instructed to investigate an unknown target approaching from the south. The Princeton also wanted to know if he carried any weapons, to which the answer was no. Kurth made his way to the specified coordinates but did not pick up anything on sensors. As he looked down towards the ocean, however, his attention was immediately drawn towards a turbulent patch of water. Kurth claims to have seen a roundish disturbance on the ocean, which appeared as though something was submerged just below the surface. It reminded him of a submarine,
like a submarine? Yeah, I was like, a submarine?
Slowly
what the heck?
Sinking into the ocean. The Nimitz strike group did include a nuclear-powered submarine named the USS Louisville. The Louisville was in the vicinity when Kurth made his observations, so the churning may indeed have been caused by a submerging submarine. If not, then whatever was in the water managed to evade detection by the Louisville's extremely sensitive sonar. Kurth was soon joined by a squadron of 2 tandem-seated F-18s, the lead aircraft of which was piloted by Commander David Fravor. Much like Kurth, Fravor claims to have seen a disturbance on the ocean, which he described as having a vaguely cross-like shape. He thought it resembled a downed airliner and described its size as much larger than a submarine. While Kurth eventually circled back...
They just went out, they just saw this and they were like, could be anything. They weren't like, oh, let's go down there and look, figure out what the hell it is. Let's mark this and go look. Like, let's look at it right now. Like, bro, this is like exactly what you said. Exactly what you said, Jack. I don't understand how we have like supposedly the most advanced stuff in the world. And then, bro, knowing how the government is, bro, they hear one little thing. They're like, oh, this terrorist or whatever might be over at this mosque or something, and they're bombing the shit out of it. They're doing all this extra stuff, bro, and they're going to check it out. But then if it's an alien, they're like, we took a picture. And then we just analyzed the picture. Like, what?
Back for the Nimitz, Fravor and his wingman decided to get a closer look. As they began their descent, they noticed a white, capsule-shaped craft moving erratically above the disturbance. At first, they thought it could be a helicopter, but there were no rotor blades.
Why is everything just moving in a zigzag?
No markings, no exhaust, no protrusions of any kind. The UFO appeared to maintain a consistent altitude, but made rapid lateral movements with no visible means of propulsion. According to Fravor, it was a bit smaller than an F-18 and resembled a giant mint of tic-tac. As Fravor continued to descend, his wingman decided to maintain altitude and kept watching from above. Flying in a spiraling downward motion, Fravor was getting closer and closer until suddenly the UFO realigned its axis and began to climb at an incredible rate of speed. Both of them were now flying in a circle. The UFO was coming up while the F-18 was going down. In an effort to close the distance between them, Fravor made a final aggressive turn before the UFO rapidly accelerated up to hypersonic speed and disappeared in a matter of seconds. As they looked down towards the ocean, it was now perfectly calm.
So what was the other dude doing? He was just chilling? Just keeping the path? Got like, ugh, Jesus. I'd have been mad. I'm like, bro, I'm over here hitting these crazy turns. What were you doing? You didn't keep your eyes on it?
Okay, but what about the video? Well, so Fravor and his wingman made it back to the Nimitz. They landed and ran into a different flight crew preparing to head back out. They told them what they had seen and to be on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary. Soon thereafter, another tandem-seated F-18 took to the skies. This time, it was outfitted with an advanced targeting forward-looking infrared camera system. This at-FLIR pod is controlled by the weapons systems operator seated behind the pilot, and the backseater of this flight was Lieutenant Chad Underwood. A few minutes after departing the Nimitz, Underwood detected something on his radar. The unknown target was directly ahead, a few tens of kilometers away. The target's behavior was erratic and unpredictable. Its altitude and airspeed were in constant flux. According to Underwood, it simply did not abide by the known laws of physics. At some point, Underwood managed to get a lock on the target.
So they just be knowing the laws of physics?
And
I guess
this
if you're
is
a
when the
pilot,
much publicized video was recorded. At the beginning of the video, we see a UFO being tracked in infrared. Underwood then switches to visible light, revealing an out-of-focus rounded mass in the distance. He then switches back to infrared and alternates between two different zoom levels on multiple occasions. Not much happens until the very end of the video, when the UFO suddenly disappears off to the left-hand side of the screen. As the target
if I was watching this, I'd be like, damn, dog, like you over here switching zooms, but you ain't go left to right? Like, what's going on?
was too far away to be seen with the naked eye, neither Underwood nor his pilot ever made visual contact. The Princeton continued to detect anomalous radar tracks for at least 2 more days, and according to Senior Chief Day, they eventually disappeared near the Mexican island of Guadalupe. In complete isolation,
whoever did the
utterly
music art
divorced
for this
from
is
any
fire.
and all surrounding context, this video is extraordinarily unremarkable. It's a fuzzy blob against a featureless background. It's only when you place it in the middle of these truly remarkable stories that the video itself becomes remarkable. When skeptics and debunkers claim that this is a distant airplane, I understand why many are so opposed to that explanation, because the witness accounts say otherwise. A distant airplane can't just zip around the sky as if gravity was non-existent.
It's like that plane from G.I. Joe. You guys ever seen it?
Doesn't make any sense. Unfortunately, we don't see any of those physics-defying maneuvers in the video. In fact, this fuzzy blob does not do much of anything until the very end, when it suddenly disappears off to the left-hand side of the screen. Now, some claim this is due to a sudden acceleration by the UFO, but it could also be something as simple as the camera losing its target lock. It's difficult to tell. Underwood himself is uncertain about what happens at the end, as he never made visual contact. The witness accounts, meanwhile, are so extraordinary they are difficult to believe. If any regular person claimed to have seen a tic-tac shaped UFO moving erratically in the sky,
why do you keep calling it a tic-tac?
But when that same story is told by some of the most qualified observers on the planet, it makes you wonder. And it wasn't just 1 or 2, these UFOs were either seen or tracked by dozens of experienced aviators and sailors for nearly a week. They were seen from multiple vantage points and tracked by one of the most sophisticated radar systems in the world. To think that all of them are lying or all of them were deceived.
I feel like it's one of those things where we just got to be like, hey, maybe our shit is trash and we need to just rethink all of the technology that we have. Because like my thing is, how are people okay with this information? Like the people who like go and bother the FBI and all these people into like releasing information, like how do they get this shit back? And they're like, oh, okay. Like, bro, there's no way. There's no way this is what niggas are using for real data, bro. There's no way. Like, it's just a joke. It's literally a joke, bro. That's why I just, like, you can't even, You can't even believe this stuff, man. It's so hard. It's like how am I supposed to go off of like 10% of the information, you know? Like, we know there's something out there. We know for sure there's something out there. But why are they hiding it? Like, why are they hiding it? I don't know. I guess the world probably could go into a pan. I don't know, bro. People are weird. People are weird. Look what happened during Corona. You know what I mean? People went up and bought all the toilet paper thinking that they were just about to be shitting their brains out for months. It made no sense.
By some prosaic phenomena seems absurd. At the same time, there is no way to verify what they're saying. We have no choice but to take them at their word. We don't have the radar data, the radio communication logs, nor any corroborating evidence. Well, except for this pixel-deficient footage, I guess. Some of the witnesses claim there was actually a much longer and much higher resolution video than the one we see today. They claim to have seen this video on board the Princeton and that the shape of the UFO was perfectly clear as it violently maneuvered around the screen. What's interesting about this claim is that when the video was first leaked online back in 2007, the anonymous leaker claimed they had 4 different versions of the video in their possession. 2 of them were said to be shorter, but the 4th was said to be twice as long and supposedly showed more UFO movement. Unfortunately, this extended version has never seen the light of day, and if some of the witnesses are to be believed, it likely never will. You see, on the evening of November the 14th, all the footage and data from these events were supposedly erased. Witnesses claim that 2 men arrived via helicopter who then collected the relevant data before having all the tapes and hard drives wiped clean. Witnesses from both the Nimitz and Princeton recall such a visit and insist that nothing like it had ever happened before.
Damn. That's so crazy, bro. That's so crazy to me, man. Oh, I know stuff like this has to happen because you have to control information. You know what I mean? Like, these people would have attempted to doctor stuff would have got out. It would have been weird. You never know how it's gonna get out. You know what I'm saying? So you got to control the narrative. So I understand that there's probably some weird type of Men in Black organization that just controls this kind of stuff, you know? But that's so cool. I feel like it'd be the coolest thing ever to experience something like this. It'd probably be scary because you probably think that oh, since they care so much about it, they might try and kill me. But then again, I'd probably be like, oh shit, hold up, cuz. Hey, hit me with the laser, dog. Hit me with the little forget me laser.
This understandably led to speculations of some sort of cover-up, that these sightings were that of top-secret military drones or aircraft. While the US military is undoubtedly experimenting with all kinds of cutting-edge technology, it is difficult to believe they possess gravity-defying, hypersonic flying tic-tacs. If so, they would possess technology so far beyond anything known to the public, it would be akin to magic. And this was back in 2004. Don't get me wrong, 2004 was a magical time compared to
current year.
But it was still aggressively 2004.
Flat ball! From a disc to a ball right before your eyes. Catch it, flatten it, and let it fly! Flat ball!
I really don't know what to make of this story. After reading, watching, and listening to so many interviews with the people who were there, I'm left with a distinct impression that they're telling the truth. The video, on the other hand, does little to support their claims. Sure, this fuzzy blob may be unidentified, but it's not unexplainable.
Well, I mean, kind of unexplainable. Well, I guess. The USS Theodore Roosevelt encounters.
The second and third videos,
Chad, are we good to continue with chapter 2, or are you guys done with this?
Were recorded off the southeastern coast of the United States in early 2015. While those who recorded the footage have yet to come forward, some of their crewmates and fellow pilots have, and according to them, the story goes like this. In the summer of 2014, a naval strike group led by the aircraft carrier the USS Theodore Roosevelt was conducting pre-deployment exercises somewhere off the coast of Virginia. Much like with the Nimitz encounters,
if you guys don't know, everything in America that is weird happens in Virginia, okay? Just letting you know now.
Sign of trouble came in the form of
Virginia might as well be where the same thing is how you guys talk about Welsh people, that might as well be Virginia.
Anomalous radar tracks. Following a fleet-wide upgrade of aircraft radar systems, pilots had begun to pick up unidentified targets while conducting routine training missions. The tracks were initially dismissed as false positives, but their behavior was unlike anything they had seen before. Gravity-defying maneuvers, hypersonic velocities, and other mystifying
We've seen that
shenanigans.
before. That's not
Attempts to intercept these UFOs were initially unsuccessful. Lieutenant Danny Acoin claims that on 2 separate occasions he tried but failed to make visual contact. Then, one day, a squadron is said to have narrowly avoided a mid-air collision with one of these UFOs. The 2 jets had been flying in tandem no more than a few tens of meters apart when something flew right in between them. That something was oddly described as a cube encased by a translucent sphere. Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who spoke to one of the pilots,
that literally could have just been a rock falling, and it had created like something as it was coming into the atmosphere. You know what I mean? That was an asteroid. That's what I'm saying.
once they had landed, claims the experience had visibly spooked them. So much so, the squadron filed an official safety report. According to Graves, this was far from an isolated incident. These UFOs were allegedly seen by dozens of pilots for several months and could remain airborne for up to 12 hours at a time. Yet, despite growing concerns among the Roosevelt crew, training missions continued as if nothing was amiss.
Hell no.
By
See,
early
this one, I
2015,
would've been like, hey, we
the
gotta get up
Roosevelt
out of
strike
here.
group had made its way down to the coast of Florida, which is when the 2 now famous videos were recorded, both of which are said to be short clips taken from much longer and higher resolution footage. We don't know much about the circumstances as the officers involved have chosen to remain silent, but let's take a look at the first one.
Dude, there's a drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
Why are we watching this again?
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
So, there are a few things to unpack in this one. If we ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals, the thing that immediately stands out is the apparent rotation of the UFO. I use the word apparent because some debunkers claim that this rotation is an optical illusion. You see, the ATFLIR pod is equipped with something known as a derotation mechanism. It's meant to counteract the rotation of the camera so that the orientation of the image stays the same.
Oh, so it could have been a
image
defect?
stabilization. What may not be stabilized, however, are certain artifacts produced by the lens of the camera. You can even try this yourself. Aim a camera towards a light source, rotate the camera, stabilize the footage, and there you go. The orientation of the image is preserved while these spokes of light rotate along with the camera. So much like how the light from this light bulb is producing a lens flare, the infrared radiation from this UFO is said to be producing a lens glare. In other words, the bunkers claim it is the camera and thereby the glare which is rotating, not the UFO itself. While this explanation seems perfectly reasonable to my...
Yo, it's crazy because I bet there's a guy who's like some type of genius with like lights and illusions and shit, and he saw this video and was like, are y'all stupid?
untrained eyes, things get a bit more confusing once we bring back the audio.
Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
If this rotation is merely the result of image stabilization, why would the 2 pilots fail to recognize it as such? Surely they, if anyone, would know what that looks like. And they're not alone.
Would they?
Both Lieutenant Graves and Acoin believe it is the UFO which is rotating. Furthermore, an expert on the ATFLIR system has very plainly stated that this is not an optical illusion. But this is not the only puzzling comment made by the 2 pilots.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
So
Jesus.
the radar is supposedly detecting a whole fleet of UFOs, which are all traveling crosswind.
But you can only see one.
If what we're looking at is something prosaic, like the blooming exhaust of a jet engine, these comments don't make a whole lot of sense. I would love to hear what these 2 pilots have to say if they ever decide to come forward. Until then, all we can do is speculate.
Jesus. This is my thing too, bro. This is how I've always felt about this kind of stuff. I feel like there's a lot of private organizations out there with like that companies ran by billionaires, things like that, where they're like trying to test out certain things and do stuff. And I feel like a lot of these sightings are like us seeing things that are supposed to be like tested in secret, but they're like being found out about, you know what I mean? And since we don't know what it is, we're not able to actually discover, like, I guess not all of them, but I feel like that could totally be like an answer for it. I don't know why, bro. I don't know, man. I believe more in the simulation thing rather than there being like other beings and shit and like that are actually here with us, if that makes sense. Like, and I would definitely like, what I've never really understood, bro, is because the way that the military does work is it is a shoot first, ask questions later. And flying, like people discovering stuff like this, seeing things like this, like it makes no sense to me why there wasn't like firing or, and then there should be like a report of people saying, oh, we couldn't even hit it. Like we tried to lock onto it or do this. Like here's them obviously locking onto it. So they were able to lock onto it, which is just wild.
Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly.
This video may seem very striking at first, but it is arguably the least interesting of the three. Once again, let's ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals. Unlike the previous two, the UFO in this one is colder than its surroundings, so the ocean below is radiating more heat than whatever this is. It may look as though the UFO is traveling at high speed, but this is likely the result of parallax. In short, aircraft go fast, camera fixed on not so fast UFO appear to go fast. Some say the UFO is near sea level and therefore the parallax explanation doesn't work, but we can actually derive its altitude using the numbers on screen and find that that is not true. Everything seen in this video is consistent with a balloon or some sort of debris floating in the wind. The commentary by the pilots, however, does once again introduce a bit of confusion. I mean, it seems odd for the pilots to be so excited over something so mundane, but without hearing from the pilots themselves, we can do nothing but speculate.
Dang, I love when they like break this stuff down like that, bro. Cause it's like they have such a different look on it than we do, you know? What you know about something? What?
The person responsible for making these videos available to the public is a man named Lou Elizondo. Beginning in 2008, Elizondo was the head of a secret government-funded effort to investigate UFO sightings known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. By late 2017, however, Elizondo had grown so disillusioned with the government's lack of interest in the program's efforts that he decided to resign. In his resignation letter, Elizondo writes that certain individuals within the government are staunchly opposed to UFO research, that inflexible mindsets and political contention essentially prevented him from doing his job. He portrays the government as virtually unconcerned about an issue which he believes could pose a threat to national security, so much so that he felt it necessary to resign in protest. This seemingly uncaring attitude was also noted by witnesses of both the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters. For instance, Lieutenant Ryan Graves recalled how the commander of the Roosevelt strike group seemed completely unfazed by this video. On the day when it was captured, he supposedly looked at it for 5 seconds, then walked away without saying a word. Some of the senior officers on board Nimitz and Princeton are said to have had an equally muted response. These are very bizarre reactions to potential airspace incursions. You'd think they'd want to make sure these UFOs are not some kind of threat. The near mid-air collision reported by one of the squadrons from the Roosevelt seems especially concerning. To account for this apparent disinterest, many point to the severe stigma surrounding the topic of UFOs. Regardless of how inaccurate it may be, the term UFO has for many become synonymous with aliens and spaceships. So much so, the government now favors the term UAP specifically to avoid this unwanted association. Whether sightings go unreported or uninvestigated, the argument is that people choose to look the other way because they're concerned about their reputation. No one wants to be seen as a nutcase and potentially lose out on a promotion. Others believe there could be something a bit more conniving at play, that no serious action is taken because a highly advanced and top-secret drone program is responsible for the sightings. Even some of the witnesses have entertained that possibility. For instance, Sean Cahill, who was the chief master at arms on board the Princeton, perceived the inaction of senior staff as a clear sign that the UFOs were known military assets. But as previously mentioned, it is difficult to believe such radical innovation could have taken place in absolute secrecy. We're talking about such advanced technology it would barely make sense in a science fiction novel. Vehicles that can exceed the speed of sound without producing any sonic booms. Vehicles that can drop or climb to virtually any altitude in a matter of seconds. Vehicles that can violently change direction of travel as if inertia was a mere suggestion. None of that should be possible, yet dozens of trained observers claim they witnessed the impossible. The least uncomfortable solution, therefore, is to simply not believe them. Sure, the witnesses are credible, but they're not incontrovertible. Everything from optical illusions to faulty equipment could be used to cast doubt on their extraordinary tales. And without any corroborating evidence, except for this nebulous footage, that is not a difficult task. As such, many government officials may not seem concerned because they genuinely believe there is nothing to be concerned about.
Really?
Personally, I'm left feeling very conflicted. On the one hand, I find the witness accounts quite compelling. On the other, I find this grainy trilogy of dots in the sky somewhat underwhelming. Sure, the videos are fascinating, but they're also far too ambiguous to provide any decisive answers. I highly recommend that you seek out and listen to some of the witness accounts so that you can judge
a lot of those. Even I saw a couple of you guys mentioning the Bob Lazar thing. If you guys haven't watched that kind of stuff, you really gotta watch this video.
Chances are more information will have been released. According to Elizondo, the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters are just the tip of the iceberg. Sightings by military personnel are said to be commonplace. It's just that we rarely hear about them. I can only hope that more evidence is released in the near future and that at least one video depicts something inexplicable. Something that is unidentified.
I feel like the biggest thing about this kind of stuff, bro, is that it seems to me a lot of the reason why I have so much skepticism in it is because we have like 4 million satellites, bro, that are just recording the Earth like all the time, 24/7, just taking pictures constantly, that they can backlog and go through and be like, oh, okay, so this is the position of where it was at, this is the coordinates, the time that it was seen, and they can go in and literally get a fucking 12K picture of whatever it was that was there and be like, and boom, you know what I mean? So that's like, I just hate it, bro, because it's when we figure out about it, it's already gonna have been a thing for like 30 years. Like, think about it, bro. They were cloning people in the 90s. Well, technically they were cloning goats. They were cloning animals in the 90s. Like, where do you think we are in science now, this day and age? You understand what I'm saying? So it's just like, the reason why it sucks so bad, because I feel like whenever I get into this kind of stuff, it just opens the question on like, should we have more access to information? Like, should we know more? I don't know, man. Let me know down below what you guys think. I love y'all, baby. Big peace.